Howdy all of you delicious people, I'm here today to review Obi-Wan Kenobi. So, this series was very refreshing for this episode because it had a very bizarre opening, I'll admit that. Like, the one thing that they focus on at the beginning of this show, I'm like, that has got to be like the worst thing from the prequels that they're starting off in this episode here. Because in my mind, I'm like, you're having me have nightmares about the younglings. And I'm like, no. None of that. No. Because immediately when I had this whole scene being played out in my brain, I'm like, seriously? That's where you're going with here? And, like, that scene had no connection with the rest of the episode. So I'm like, why? Why did that even need to exist? Just to haunt us? Just to, like, make us realize that we should have gone on and seen all the prequels if we haven't already, or if it's been a while. But yeah, but I remembered like most of the stuff from the prequels somehow or another, and so like it wasn't like a hard transition going into this show. Plus everything was so like easy and smooth and so on and so forth within this episode, giving us time with characters that we didn't have time to marinate on in episode 3 to showcase more here was like, oh, this is so cool. Seeing Owen in this episode was like, yes, because I like Joel Edgerton anyways, and so to kind of have him like incorporated in here. Because we have Obi-Wan Kenobi, who is mostly in Tatooine via this episode. He's kind of hiding away, because everyone is to, like, all the Jedis are to just be on their own. All of them are in hiding right now. They are to just have self-preservation and, like, to try to, like, save themselves from certain death. And so we go into a story where we have these characters called the Inquisitors, and I'm kind of teeing up this episode now, that are trying to hunt down all these Jedis, and I'm like, these Inquisitors actually look so cool. And the Inquisitors were actually involved in the animated series, so if people like want more of this, they can go on and see the animated series if they want to go on and do that, because they're going to keep incorporating all the animated series people to kind of play with those characters. And like, I was like, heck yeah, like this is like so cool. And the visually interesting people that they add in, I'm like, like this is so visually interesting. Like I was so happy that this show was not like a Boba Fett kind of episode, because I did not really like Boba Fett. Not only was there so many freaking Easter eggs, but it was filled to the brim with just Star Wars references that I was just exhausted with that show. And when eventually we got cooldown episodes, I was like, oh man, like, thank God, because I'm like, I can't take it with every single episode being like, how many like references and Easter eggs. And so this show just wanted to just tell us a really a pretty good, compelling story, even though at some points it really felt a lot like episode 4 in a lot of ways. I was to just be very open to this show, kind of referencing a bunch of stuff from the prequels. If people were to have gone on and hated those, then it is what it is. But then why are you here watching the series? You're just like, well, like, but I just wanted to just, like, I liked the prequels. I did. And so I'm kind of hoping that eventually, like, things from the prequels will eventually just come back up again, because I just thought that those movies were fun for the most point, with the exclusion of the whole, like, pod racing thing. That was kind of just, why? But anyways, plus also the beginning intro of this episode, I was like, no, no, don't remind me of any of that. No, that's garbage. That's no. But anyways, so with that said, yeah, definitely thumbs up. I hope to eventually get into episode 2 tomorrow and review that. So that will exist. Because I am worried that a Star Wars episode will give me a thing where I'm biting off more than I can chew. So I'm just trying to slow into these rather than try to get them all done. So Obi-Wan and Tatooine is really fun, but we're also focusing on other things besides Obi-Wan. There's certain characters that are to be much older now, where it seems that they're going to go on and give us some missions to do in this episode, with Obi-Wan getting back to, at some point, possibly being a Jedi. So that's great. So with that said, let's go on and let's just double fire this bad boy up. Hopefully hopefully I'll be able to go on and just get in through all this. And so let's go into spoiler time. Spoiler time is about the time we use again to spoil this episode. So in the beginning of this episode, we have a Jedi who I believe is like a Padawan. Like I don't feel like it's a legit Jedi who is going on and teaching all these other like little kids how to do force powers and stuff like that. So we all of a sudden break in with the Order 66, and I'm like, no, don't remind us of frickin' Obi-Wan coming to Padme and telling her that Anakin killed all those younglings. Please don't go into that scene where like he's to murder all those young kids. I don't want to see that. I would be freaking horrified by any of that garbage to be seen again. And just even having this little bubble of reference, I am just kind of like, I don't know. I don't want to see any of that. And so we have at one point where these kids are all running from these Clone War droids, and so the Jedi ends up getting killed, and all the other younglings are to try to get away from Order 66. So we stop from that, but then we go on, and I think we transition to Tatooine, where we have these 3 Inquisitors that all drop. We have the Grand Inquisitor, that is to be kind of like the bald, white-headed guy, and then we have the 3rd brother and sister, who I guess the one Inquisitor is called Reva because she has some revenge mission that I guess she desperately needs to get to within the story for whatever reason, to where she is just driven to the point of the Grand Inquisitor saying, like, I don't know if I can trust you in this mission. Like, I think that you're going to go on and sabotage all that I'm trying to accomplish here. So we go on into this story, and we have a Jedi called Nari. And he is to be hiding away in the saloon. And so the Inquisitors are to go on to this saloon and are to talk to all the people and the guy behind the bar. And it's telling them, like, well, hey, guys, like, I'm paraphrasing, like, hey, like, it seems that you guys may possibly have a Jedi in your midst. And here's the thing that I loved about this episode the most. They are to bring up basically Jedi's kryptonite, that the Inquisitors, the Grand Inquisitor is to mention that helping people is a Jedi's kryptonite, and when somebody is to go on and need help, this Jedi has to go on and help them. And so The Grand Inquisitor is to tell this barkeep, this guy behind the counter, that there is a Jedi in their midst, and he had probably helped any number of any of you people within the saloon, and because of that good deed, you had gone on and decided to hide him away from us, and I want you to reveal who that is to me right now. Somehow or another, this guy was to have this itch of wanting to help you, and you're going to go on and hide him from me. So we go on and have this Grand Inquisitor that is to be talking to this guy, and at some point Nari is to use his Jedi powers, and then so he decides to run away and is to toss this certain item to kind of thwart his exit. So we have the Inquisitors who are to realize that Nari is kind of small meat and potatoes, and so like they'll get him eventually. It's only a matter of time. They're just happy that they were to go on and know that there's another Jedi here, so they can eventually take him. So while the Grand Inquisitor is talking with Reva, the third sister, this third sister is to just talk about Obi-Wan, hoping that this Jedi will lead her to him. And this Grand Inquisitor is like, well, hey, I don't like where your head's at. Like, I think that we should just go on and just get any Jedi that we're gonna get. And you going on about Obi-Wan consistently, like, it's just not good. To the point where he is kind of like rethinking bringing her along. So after that moment, we're going on and we have Obi-Wan Kenobi that is in Tatooine, and he is to be in this meat packing place in Tatooine, and every single day he is to go on and carve up this little slice of meat, put it in his little like pocket of sorts, and is to eventually get his pay for the day. So Obi-Wan is on Tatooine, and he is to not wear any of his Jedi clothing. He's basically to just be in disguise. And so we have Obi-Wan Kenobi that is to be like consistently scouting the moisture farm of Luke Skywalker and Owen and Beru. And so we have it to where Obi-Wan is to be called Ben here. And so Ben is going on and consistently watching over Luke every single day. At some point, he is to make his way back to his place, which is basically just a cave, to talk to this Tiki Jawa that he just consistently calls Tiki, and is to ask for this specific toy, but then is to also ask for this part back that this Jawa obviously stole, and then the Jawa didn't even clean it. So we go on and we have frickin' Ben, who's just kind of ticked off at this Jawa, and so the Jawa, of course, is to leave, and that's when, of course, we have Ben, who is to be dreaming about the past and remembering all the prequel stuff, high grounds, and Anakin, I failed you, and all this jazz and all these things, remembering about his fallen teacher Qui-Gon, which it would be great if we had an actual cameo of Liam Neeson in the show, but who knows, Liam Neeson might be freaking busy because of all the movies that he's just chucking out. Good grief. But so maybe they can like CGI and him in and just have Liam just have like some lines and whatever, but still. So Obi-Wan is at some point calling out for Qui-Gon, and he's not there. So we have, of course, at some point where Ben is to deliver this toy to Owen's farm, and then is to leave to again not have any connection with Luke. So with that, we also within this episode are having Nari that is to meet up with Ben and is to keep calling him like Obi-Wan, and is to have like Nari with this lightsaber, and is having Obi-Wan like, hey, like we need to go on together and fight off this threat, and we need to go on and be Jedis. And Ben's like, no, we're not going to do that. You're gonna go on and you're gonna find some place in the sand to dig a very big hole and put your lightsaber in it and forget that it exists. And like never ever do anything Jedi related. No, you're gonna go on and just forget that you're a Jedi. And Nari's like, what? And like how could you say that? And it's like, yeah, like go on, like people are hunting after us, like people are coming for us, like we need to like self-preservation, like we need to just stay alive to just keep the Jedis alive. And so Nari is very confused by this, and so he's like, okay, because everybody within this first episode is pushing Obi-Wan to be Obi-Wan again, and he's like, no, I don't think I can. Like, I don't think I can be the guy that you need me to be. And everybody's like, but we need you. And he's like, no, like you're calling the wrong guy. You're asking the wrong person for help. Like, I am just like, I'm a shell of a man of once I was. So getting all that out of the way. So we not only have that, and so Nari goes on his own way to, by the end of this episode, find himself to be killed and hung and shown to everybody, because we always have to have these like moments of making an example of people, kind of like in the old like Braveheart days and stuff like that, where we have to show people hung in a tree to scare everyone else off, to make an example. Kind of like how we have all the stormtrooper helmets in the Boba Fett series. It's like just putting fear into people, or instilling fear that this will happen to you, so there's nowhere to run, there's nowhere to hide. So also within this episode, we are to go to Alderaan, and we of course have Bale, or Senator Bale and Bale's wife, who are dealing with a very very pranksterish, very like do whatever she wants to do Leia. So we are focused, we not only got to see like Luke, who is just kind of this young Luke who's kind of playing around, and he's like pretending that he's racing, or that he's pod racing, or that he's driving in this vehicle of sorts. We also turn around and we have Leia, who is with this droid named Lola, playing in this tree, climbing this tree, playing a prank on her own mother by dressing one of her like friends or her like people that are watching over her to have like her like put in on all these clothes to then have Leia's mother turn around and realize, or stepmother realize, that this isn't actually Leia. And so now Leia's stepmother is going on like, okay, where exactly is my where exactly is my daughter? Is she in the trees again? Is she where is she? So Leia's stepmother is to go on and find Leia in the tree, messing around with this droid Lola. And so eventually Leia is to come down, and so Leia's stepmother is so upset that she is to go on and take this Lola droid and is to put it within her pockets and whatever. But Leia is to pickpocket her own stepmother and is to go on and take this. And we have Leia's stepmother who's going on and like, I can feel you doing that, right? So I guess Leia was to go on and go into this tree and count all of uh the spaceships flying by, and she was like, oh, there's a pirate ship, there's a transport ship, there's a this ship, there's a that ship. So eventually, finally, when Leia is to get her appropriate uh clothes on and everything that like that to make her way to meet up with certain family members and to have this whole fundraising thing going on for all of this stuff. So we go on and we have Senator Bale, who is to meet up with Leia and is to ask her, like, hey, like, what did you go on and do? And, like, what kind of ships did you see? And Princess Leia was rattling off all the ships, and he's like, oh, okay, good. And so, like, Leia's stepmother is like, well, I guess that's where she gets it from. So they go into this meeting, and so it seems that Leia is to meet up with her cousin, and so Leia and her cousin are having this talk, and between the two of them, it seems that Leia is to be defined as not a real Organa, because she is to be a stepchild of this family. So she's basically the equivalent of like a Jon Snow from like Game of Thrones, or so like since she's not really in this by blood, like then she should not eventually be a princess. And after Leia is to have that moment, eventually she's to meet up with her father, and her father is to tell her, it's like, well, hey, like I was like I raised you and everything like that, so you're going to be like an Organa just like anyone else, like, and you are going to go on and rule over your cousin, and there's nothing he can do about it. So, sucks to be him. So, we have it at some point where Leia is to be taken by a number of men who I don't exactly know the name of. A group of men that one of them is actually Flea from Red Hot Chili Peppers, who is to go on and steal Leia. And so it seems that Leia is to luckily have her Lola droid with her. And so when Leia is to try and break her ropes with this Lola droid, Flea comes in and is to grab this droid and is to break it. And then Leia is to mention that someone will come for her, and Flea is like, I don't think so. I don't think that's going to happen. So now we are to go back to Tatooine. And so we have the third sister, who's Reva, who is going through Tatooine and seeing certain people within this town and telling them, hey, like, you need to tell me if there is a Jedi present, or I'm just going to start lobbing people's hands off. We have the third brother that is telling Reva that she's going a little bit too far. That she is, of course, going to have possibly like a whole revolution to go on here, or somebody's going to go against them besides just the Jedi because of how far she's pushing things. And so, in some ways or another, like, there's probably going to be a reason why they're not going to go on and say anything, or they're willing to possibly die for this information. So, and the third brother is still mentioning to Reva how she's still focused on Obi-Wan Kenobi, that she can't see anything else. So, but Reva is going on and talking to the people in the town, and Owen was to go on and meet with Obi-Wan Kenobi, and was to chuck the toy back to Obi-Wan and say, it's like, well, hey, like, my child doesn't need anything from you. And so Obi-Wan is like, well, no, it's nothing like that. And so we have, of course, Obi-Wan that is to want to possibly see Luke and maybe train him, but Owen wants nothing to do with that. Like, he just wants to keep his son alive. And we also have Obi-Wan that is kind of asking Owen, it's like, well, hey, do you think that he's having any, like, do you think he has any force powers? Do you think he has any, like, midi-chlorians inside of him, kind of thing? And so we also have at some point where Leia is to showcase her force powers even in this episode. And so I'm like, wait a minute, so all that stuff that was kind of dormant before, that we never really saw in much of the Star Wars episodes until, like, the later on movies of them, like, now we're even seeing here that Layla was to already have some, like, force powers, because when she was talking to her cousin, we have Leia who could, like, sense that her cousin was to not like her. And so Owen was to tell Obi-Wan that was to tell Obi-Wan nothing. And so all of a sudden Owen is to now be in front of Reva asking about any Jedis that are present within Tatooine, as Owen is kind of safely or as Obi-Wan Kenobi is kind of safely off with a Opie, a kind of camel of sorts, because we have consistently Obi-Wan just kind of making his way with this camel-looking creature, this Opie. So Owen is to be confronted by Reva, and we had one person that had their hands just chopped off, and Reva's thinking that Owen is hiding something. And it gets to the point where Owen's life is almost on the line, and Reva is saying, like, well, hey, like, I'm going to kill him if you won't tell me anything. And so we have the third brother that is pulling the third sister off to the side to argue with her about the whole, like, her going too far thing. And so Owen was saved. And Kenobi was to tell Owen, it's like, well, I appreciate you like hiding me and not telling her. And Owen's like, well, hey, I didn't do it for you. And so it's like, oh my god, that's the Loki thing. I didn't do it for you. Because really, when Owen is probably preserving Kenobi so he can also save his son. Because his son might either have Jedi power or possibly we could really just have it be that if Kenobi's found out, then maybe Owen will be found out also. So, because the prize of Anakin's son is to possibly be a thing too great, to just be a thing to possibly have to bargain with. And so I think that's kind of a very interesting like part of this show also that we're not really thinking about. So at some point, Ben, with his little cave place, is to at some point go on and get a message from Senator Bale, telling him about Leia being kidnapped, and Ben is like, well, I have to be in Tatooine. I have to look over Luke. And Senator Bale is telling Kenobi, it's like, well, aren't both of these kids as important? Like I get it, you probably want to go on and you want to train, like, Luke at some point, but, like, shouldn't you go on and focus on both of these children? And Kenobi's like, well, yeah, because both of them like are equally like they're both Anakin's kids. So we have Bale who's consistently saying Obi-Wan like you're our only hope, and Ben's like, I think you're calling the wrong guy. Like, I am not the person you think I am. And Bale is like, well, you know what? I get that like all that Anakin stuff, like really mess with your head and all, but you need to go on and you need to help us. Like you need, so because they took this child in without like a second thought, and so like now it kind of feels like they owe like Kenobi owes them one. So Obi-Wan is to go within the desert to re-dig up a hole to get his lightsabers, and is to look somewhat Jedi-esque yet again, to go onto this transport ship to try to find Leia and save her, and that is the way of which that this episode is to end. Hopefully I've covered everything, but I also felt like I forgot a million things also. But so, with that said, I feel okay enough about calling this one a episode. Yeah, I liked this one. We had the consistent parts of Obi-Wan going to that whole meat packing place, and him consistently putting that whole meat thing in, and eventually going and eating food and stuff like that. And so hopefully I covered most of this episode, so I'm going to go out of my way to get out of here. Hopefully going on into tomorrow and covering the second episode, as well as doing a possible another review hopefully today. So goodbye everybody. Bye everybody.